You may be wondering, what's the difference between an injunction and a caveat? A caveat, I've already explained to you, I'll leave the link in the description, but a caveat is basically granted by a registrar. An injunction is a court order which is granted by court. In most cases, it's granted by the High Court. And what empowers the High Court? It is Section 38 of the Judicature Act of Uganda. So who can apply for an injunction? The first condition is that the person who is applying for an injunction should have a high likelihood of success in the main suit. An injunction is not a case, it's not that you're going to ask for it in the final suit. I've explained what a suit is, and you're not going to ask it in its final prayers. When you are in the middle of a case, let's assume this table is a case, the injunction is going to be the application. So even in the middle of a case, you can still apply to court and say, my lord, still this person is trespassing on my land, but they have continued to trespass on my land and they're constructing a building there without my consent. I am still applying for an injunction to stop building or tower. So basically, the person who is applying for an injunction should have a high likelihood of success. Okay, so how does one apply for a temporary injunction, or in this case, an injunction? First of all, the applicant must file through his lawyer to a competent court, and this is through way of chamber summons. Now, chamber summons, basically, your lawyer is going to go to the judge's chambers and then ask for an injunction. By then, they must have already applied for an injunction through a formal application. That's step number one. Step number two is that this application for an injunction should be coupled with an affidavit. Now, many times I've told you that most applications or even notices of motion at least should be accompanied by something. But in this case, since it's an application and it's an injunction, which is a court order, it should be accompanied by an affidavit. Now, step number three, once you've applied through chamber summons and you've coupled it with an affidavit, step number three is that you need to file court fees. There is no document in Uganda which you're going to file through court without paying legal fees. And of course, those are the fees that court needs. Number four, through your lawyer, you're the applicant who is applying for an injunction. You're then going to serve it onto the defendant. So step number five is that the respondent is then going to file a defense or file a reply in response to the application of the injunction. Then step number six, after the defendant has then filed a reply or given a written reply to the court, then the final step is that the court is going to take into consideration through a court proceeding. So there's going to be a hearing, and then there's going to be a hearing whether the application of the injunction should be granted, whether in general the injunction should be granted. Then finally, the court will then decide through their judge, because I told you that an injunction is done or is requested for by a judge of the High Court. So finally, the judge is going to ask themselves whether this injunction should be granted to the